Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest. Absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs.
Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. First of all, let me wish you a very Merry Christmas. This will be the last podcast I do before Christmas. And so even though we're still about a week out, I just want to wish everybody a absolutely wonderful Christmas. Now, let's get a little bit into today's show, and then I've got a little Christmas treat for you. Now, going back to my book, Herbal Medicine for Preppers, Homesteaders, and Permaculture People, I have a chapter on herbs that are good for the eyes. We're talking specifically eye injuries and irritations, but several of these are very soothing and have astringent qualities. Some of them may actually help with vision a little bit, but of course, we're not going to make that claim. All right, so we're looking at this as a first aid situation. A scratched or irritated eye can be a major issue if not treated properly, leading to infection and even blindness. So, if you're out in the woods and a limb pops back and hits you in the face and scratches your eye, you need to wash that. You need to deal with it right away because you could potentially lose the eye. Um, Other infections, eye infections, pink eye and such, if left untreated, minor eye issues can become a major big deal. Michael Moore, who, again, not the filmmaker, but the herbalist who taught at the Southwestern School of Botanical Medicine, explained that our bodies are filled with salt water. Using plain, unsalted water irritates the eye. A bit of salt in an eye wash will soothe the eye because tears, they're salty. He recommended combining eye washes made with mesquite and acacia, boiled together for 5 minutes, strained, cooled to body temperature. He said that honey locust and mimosa also worked, and they're good for eye infections, including kids with pink eye. They're all closely related leguminous trees. You've heard me talk before about mimosa, absolutely one of my favorite trees. Um, Other mildly astringent antiseptic herbs. Now, these are herbs that can help prevent infection, help bring down the inflammation, help tighten the tissue of the eyes, actually improve clarity of vision a little bit. If your eyes are all blurry because of inflammation, include eyebright. Eyebright is euphrasia. It is the classic herb used for eyes. Okay, that is the one. If you look at any old European herbal, they're going to recommend eyebright. Now, you can use these as an eye wash. There's a tea made from the herb. Like I said, a little bit of salt added to it. Taste it with your fingertip. If it tastes about like tears, you're in the right ballpark. Okay. You're going to want to use plain salt. You're going to want to use sea salt if possible. Try not to use the iodized salt. The iodine in the iodized salt could be a little bit antiseptic, but it could also be a little bit irritating. Try it both ways. If it bothers you, don't use it. I probably would not. I would use just as natural a salt as I can get. And I do love sea salt. I'm really fond of sea salt, both medicinally and in food. I just think it has a wonderful flavor. You can also use these herbs. Again, they're made into a tea first, a decoction or an infusion, as we would say. You can use them as a compress. So if you're not washing out the eye, you're putting on a cloth and covering the eye. The best way actually to use an eye wash is to get a what's called an eye cup. This is these you can still find them at drugstores. They're a little hard to find. If you ask the pharmacist, he should be able to find you one. If he doesn't have it in stock, you should be able to order it. Your eye doctor, if you go to an eye doctor, may be able to get one for you. It's a little glass cup that you put a solution in and just put it over your eye and open your eye. So your eye is completely submerged under the wash and you kind of roll your eyes around, look one direction or the other, and it really helps wash and remove any foreign matter really thoroughly from the eye. That's the very best way to do it. In a pinch, you could use the little plastic cups that come on top of cough syrup bottles, anything, a shot glass. If you can get a shot glass to fit neatly over your eye, that would work. A jigger may be a little more practical, but that's the way you use an eye wash ideally. Now, a lot of times you may not have that, and you may just have to kind of pour or drip the eye wash onto the eye. That's difficult. Hopefully you have someone to help you with it, but in an emergency, that may be what you have to do. If you're putting together your herbal first aid kit or your herbal medicine cabinet, I highly recommend getting an eye cup. Injuries to the eyes, infection of the eyes aren't terribly frequent. Hopefully, I don't think I've actually ever had one. Well, I've scratched my eyes pretty badly before. Yeah, one of my dogs was particularly fond of blackberries. This was a Weimaraner who loved to eat blackberries. So I'm out picking blackberries. She gets the scent of them. She goes running into the bushes, and one of them, she hit a branch, and that branch or cane came back, and the thorn got me right in the eye. Okay, so that's really the only serious eye problem I've ever had. But this is something you want to have on hand just in case, just in case. You can get some sand in your eye, you can get metal filings, very common, very painful, very dangerous. You want to have substances on hand, okay? So again, eye bright is classic. It's kind of the go-to in Europe. It's getting to be kind of rare in Europe. It's a very small wildflower. It's very hard to find in the United States. I would use geranium in place of eyebright, but eyebright does have that reputation for also helping to clear vision. Um, Violets do as well. Violets also help with the eye because of the aspirin-like compounds, the salicin in the violets. Yeah, I'm not talking African violet. I'm talking true violet, viola, even Johnny jump ups. Anything in that sweet violet family that is edible and can be used herbally, which is almost all of them. There are a couple that upset your stomach. That's about it. But it's not African violets. Anyway, those would be my two replacements for eyebright. But that salicin-like property will help reduce inflammation and help with pain. So violets are the first thing I'm going to be reaching for. But Father Kunzel said about eyebright, he said eyebright, that's euphrasia, was known as an excellent means of strengthening the eyes even before the birth of Christ. The ancients boiled it with wine and drank it regularly before going to bed. Father Nape recommends a decoction of eyebright, just washing your eyes diligently with eyebright water decoction. This herb is by far most effective when you throw it into a jar or in a barrel where you are fermenting cider. It will ferment with the drink, and you drink it throughout the year. Okay, that is the classic European herbal preparation of eyebright. If you have eye issues, and in this case, I'm actually talking about weak eyes, vision problems. There's such a history associated with this herb. Some people say it helps clear cataracts. There's several things. Definitely worth growing in the garden. What do you got to lose? It's a pretty little flower, one way or the other. Now, again, that's historical use. I guess I don't have empirical evidence for it, but that's what it has been believed to have done for centuries. Again, Father Nape said, as a reward and out of gratitude for its faithful services, our forefathers gave this little herb the pretty name of eyebright. Often, when no other remedy would help, this little flower gave to the eyes the last comfort. I have very often recommended it, and with good result. Both the dried and pulverized leaves are used as a tea or a powder. The eyes are well washed with the tea 2 to 3 times daily, or little pieces of linen are dipped into it and fastened over the eyes by means of a bandage during the night. It will cleanse the eyes, make them clear, and strengthen the sight. Eyebright is a small flower, like I said. It can be very hard to find outside the mountains. This is one you may want to grow in pots if you live in an environment that isn't conducive to it. Otherwise, you may want to have them in the garden. Roses are an excellent substitute for eyebright as well. Non-hybridized roses. We're talking wild roses, the old-fashioned tea roses, real roses, roses that have a scent. They have they're nice, mild, astringent. They have antiseptic properties. Just make sure those are natural roses, naturally grown. No pesticides, no fungicides, no chemical fertilizers, or you could be doing yourself more harm than good. Another classic remedy is lady's mantle. It's an astringent herb that's useful for eye infections. Wood avens is geum and was called by Father Kunzel St. Benedict's herb, which is an old name from it tending to bloom on St. Benedict's Day. He said, the Creator has given St. Benedict's herb the power to draw and eliminate everything that should not be in the eyes, nose, teeth, brain, nor in the heart. It heals the eye ache, headache, toothache, nasal cataract, strengthens the heart miraculously, and cheers you up. St. Benedict's herb is one of the plants which can draw out inflammation, probably because of the radium it contains. When the cattle in the Alps get red, inflamed eyes due to the cold wind, the herdsmen tie a bunch of the roots of this herb around the neck of the suffering cattle, and the inflammation disappears in 1 to 2 days. I have found that it works the same with human beings. The eye inflammation and often toothache and headache can be quickly healed with this herb. The power was well known in the past, but now, after it became known that many plants contain radium, the reason for this power has been clarified. The ancients were right again, as always. Fresh roots of St. Benedict's herb applied fresh and in abundance, do not simmer them, frequently help in case of encephalitis or meningitis or stiff neck. Roots of strawberry plants and tormental have the same effect. Again, we're talking astringent herbs, mildly astringent herbs. Now, geranium, as I mentioned before, is a real go-to. Crane's bill is the wild geranium usually used in herbal medicine. The English call it the herb Robert, as they would, of course. This plant is mostly used externally. It's not poisonous, but only acceptable to the stomach when mixed with wine. It is a plant that draws out inflammation. It is a fact that nasty eye infections, sore throat, swelling of the teeth, swelling of the limbs, etc., quickly disappear in people and cattle when green and crushed crane's bills are applied. If the disease cannot always be cured by the application, this herb often alleviates the greatest pains. When dried, it must be soaked in water. Many other types of geranium, including our well-known indoor geraniums, have the same effect. That was another quote from Father Kunzel. Maria Trebin recommended eyebright, of course, but combined it with valerian, the wood avens, as we just mentioned, lilac blossoms, lady's mantle, chamomile, and rue. And she would use that as a compress on irritated or weeping eyes. Of course, she also recommended small drops of Swedish bitters brushed on the eyelid and around the corners of the eye for all eye complaints. As we know, Maria Trebin swore by the Swedish bitters. Hawkweed. Hawkweed is often considered an annoying weed, but it's a wonderful herb. It's astringent, it's good for eye irritations, and is said to improve vision. So that's another one you might want to look at. It tightens the tissue of the eyes. When the eye tissues are tightened, it affects limbs. Okay? It tightens the whole eye, which can make the vision more clear. Chamomile. Chamomile boiled in milk is a soothing compress for inflamed eyes. Yarrow tea can be used as a compress for sore eyes, eye pain. Yarrow, as we know, is great for stopping bleeding, so it's a go-to for an eye injury. Powdered fennel seeds may be used as an eye wash, but according to Father Nape, are even more effective used as a steam. In such use, the fennel is put into steaming water, and the person holds their face in the steam with a towel over the back of the head over a basin to concentrate the vapors into the eyes. Honey. Yes, it's sticky and not very pleasant, but uh, mixed with warm water applied to the eyes with a clean cloth is probably your best mild antiseptic for the eyes. Honey has wonderful antiseptic properties and should probably be the first thing you reach for in case of an eye injury or an eye infection. Wormwood, that's Artemisia. The tea is just an excellent remedy for eye complaints, used both internally and externally as a wash or compress. Aloe vera was commonly used to clean and soothe inflamed, injured, and infected eyes. This was used as a dry powder mixed with water, basically. You take the leaf of the aloe and split it, open it up, scrape out the pulp, put it on a screen to dry, and then it becomes a very fine powder. That powder will then be rehydrated and applied to the eyes. The aloe vera is actually a popular laxative as well. It has a little recent comeback. Father Nape recommended it especially for that. Other herbs that are useful for eye infections, or as eye washes for injured eyes, or just to tone the eyes, to pull out inflammation and swelling and clear the vision a little bit. Bunchberry, that's a dogwood, that is Cornus canadensis. Leaf tea used as an eye wash. Foam flower, very astringent herb. According to Peterson's Field Guide, it was used by Native Americans for eye inflammation. Buttonbush, bark tea used as an eye wash and for eye inflammation. Smooth alder, bark tea used as an eye wash. You're seeing just a sort of a pattern here of astringent, mildly antiseptic herbs. Balsam poplar would fit into that. That's Populus balsamifera. A tea made from the inner bark is used as an eye wash, especially for sore eyes. It is astringent and also contains the aspirin-like salicin, just like I was talking about with violets. It's very good for wounded eyes and injuries. Indian pipe. The Indian pipe is one of our rare Appalachian herbs. It is saprophytic, meaning you cannot necessarily grow it in the garden. It has to be taken from the wild, and I would warn people against over harvesting this one because it's also just a very important herb, um, pain and anxiety, and it's one we want to keep around if we need it for first aid, but certainly not overuse it because it also has a little toxicity to it. You know, people say it basically gives them a hangover. Well, that means it's got a little toxicity to it. Indian pipe juice, just pressed from the plant, has historical use among early Americans, settlers, and Native Americans for inflamed eyes. Okay, there's so many other things we can use that are a little more responsible to use. All right. So golden seal, Oregon grape, barberry, and gold thread. As I've said so many times, these plants can be used interchangeably. Golden seal has been over harvested. You will probably find a barberry bush planted as landscaping in most any neighborhood, almost anywhere in this country. There is absolutely no reason to harvest golden seal from the wild when we have barberry growing everywhere. Oregon grape is almost as common, and those two are very closely related. Gold thread is a little plant called coptis. They all have berberin. Berberin is antiseptic. Very good used for wounds, but also for inflamed, injured, infected eyes. Absolute go-to. Probably one of the first three herbs I would grab. Plantain may be used as an eye wash to soothe pain and inflammation. Frostweed, Helianthemum canadense, strong leaf tea used as a wash for eye infections. Heal all is, well, my yard's full of it. Prunella vulgaris leaf tea is traditionally used for conjunctivitis. Probably doesn't grow as abundantly elsewhere as it does where I live, but uh, conjunctivitis can be very serious. Okay, it's a good herb to grow in your garden or keep some on hand, especially if you have kids. Osage orange. Sage orange was once widely grown in the United States. for making fence posts. It's like a lot like locust. The wood just does not break down. It's a wonderful wood for making bows. Archery bows. Um, the fruits are nice, are aromatic. They were used as, I guess, pomanders or something. People put them in the drawers to keep bugs out and make their clothes smell nice. But also, it has a few herbal uses, and among those, um, a lot of historical Native American use using the root to make a decoction or tea that's a decoction made from a root as a wash for sore eyes. So, what are my go-tos? They are violets, they are geraniums, they're roses. Uh, Eyebright, if I know where some's growing or I have some growing in the garden. If I had to choose one plant, it'd probably be eyebright. Maybe violets is a close second. But most of these plants, no matter where you live, are readily available, and you could certainly have some are very pretty. A lot of these plants will make nice house plants, make nice landscaping plants. There's no reason not to have them on hand and to learn how to use them because this is, fairly simple stuff. You're making a tea and you're either using it as a wash or as a compress, and that could really be quite important. Got to take care of your vision, and eye injuries have to be treated seriously. Now, y'all, let's get on to what I said. A little something special for today's show, it being Christmas. I have told you before about the Hicks family of Beech Creek. Beech Creek was a community on the backside of Beech Mountain. Beech Mountain is a very popular resort area in the mountains of North Carolina, the Blue Ridge Mountains, Avery County. um, Ski slopes. At one point, we actually had a theme park up there called the Land of Oz, where the entire Wizard of Oz was recreated on top of this mountain. And the fellow who opened it, Robbins, he hired many of the actors who were still alive from the Wizard of Oz movie. So as a kid, I remember Munchkins. Some of the actual Munchkins. You'd have characters dressed up like the Cowardly Lion and the Scarecrow and Dorothy, and you'd walk in a house, and all of a sudden everything would start shaking, the lights was flashing, and you'd walk through a door, and the house would be upside down because it went through the tornado, and the witch's legs were curled up under the house. It's just the greatest place for a kid. Anyway, it went bankrupt, stayed empty for years. There have been various plans of trying to bring it back that just never really worked. Now, huge resort developments have come in there, huge housing developments. And eventually it even went past the high end, big homes where all the Yankees lived on one side of the mountain. And unfortunately, the area we once knew as Beech Creek and Romanger, the backside of the mountain, are being developed and property taxes are going up. And the world I'm going to describe to you really isn't anymore. And that's the sad part. That's where I learned herbal medicine. When I was about 15, I began as an apprentice herbalist and storyteller and Appalachian folk musician with the Hicks family of Beech Mountain. And it's really special to me this time of year because every Christmas Eve was spent up there. So a few years ago, I wrote a little story that was sort of a remembrance of Christmas with the Hicks family. If y'all bear with me a little bit, it's probably gonna be a little hard for me to read at some point. So, it seems the older I get, the more emotional I get around the holidays. So much of that world is gone. So many of the people I knew have passed, and these are people who are really family. And anyway, I put this story out and on the Grow Network and a few other places, and people just loved it. And this being the family from whom I learned herbs, I thought it'd be very appropriate to read it on this show. It's going to be a little hard for me at places because these people have all passed. And really, these are some of the most precious memories I have. Let me tell you, Ray was a character. Ray Hicks. I call this story Christmas Eve with Big Ray. Big Ray. Oh man, if only y'all could see the picture I'm looking at him right now. For several years, every Christmas Eve, my mother and I would make the long, winding drive up to Big Ray's house. Big Ray was Ray Hicks, the famous storyteller, recipient of the National Heritage Award, subject of several books, and a Smithsonian exhibit. He was the teller of the Jacktails. He was a man out of time. He was a man who still lived 100 years in the past, minimum. But to us, Ray and his family were like our family. And going up to Ray's was as much of our Christmas tradition as presents were under the tree. Arvil Hicks, his name is Orville, but we all pronounce it Arvil. He's a famous storyteller in his own right. He introduced us to Ray and his wife Rosa, pronounced Rosie, and their son Ted. Arvil was a close family friend, and over the years we accompanied him to Merle Fest, to the National Storytelling Convention, Jonesboro. Met so many famous folks through him, and it was through Arvil I got to know Doc Watson, Mac Wiseman, Emmylou Harris, the great Guy Clark, who passed away, became a friend, and I miss him dearly as well. Frank Prophet, Frank Prophet Jr., his father made famous the song "Hang Down Your Head," Tom Dooley. I mean, this was, you know, a real mountain tradition, and people came from all over the world to meet Ray and Doc. I mean, members of the Grateful Dead. I mean, Dave Brisman would show up frequently. It was a really unique time and place. But I mean, all the famous folks aside, Ray and Rosie were, and Ted and Arvil were just humble and honest and genuine. And they were family to us. The first time we met Ray and Rosie was at Cove Creek School. Ray had a sister who shared my mother's name. She had died early, so when Ray met my mother, he just repeated her name over and over. And from then on, I mean, we really were like family. We'd drive up from Fosco, a community near Boone, usually in the snow, and down what was then about 10 miles of unpaved road. We'd park on the hill above Ray's and holler out, "Hello!" And, if y'all aren't from the mountains, you may not understand, but if you ever pull up to an old cabin in the middle of the nowhere, yell out hello before you start walking toward that door, or somebody may shoot you. That's just, the way things are. The first to greet us was always the dog. Ted had a little beagle, and Ray had a little black dog that had a shock of white hair right down the center of its head like a mohawk. It was actually longer than the rest of its fur, so it looked like a little white mohawk. And Ted would yell out and say, "Ewan's come on in." Well, Ray was always sitting in a chair in front of the wood stove, poking a stick into the fire. We'd say "Merry Christmas," and Ray go, "Oh, is it Christmas? God snuck up on me this year." That's the way Ray spoke. Okay. Ray had an accent that went back to his Scottish ancestors, very unique to that little area. And like I said, 100 years at a time. And Ray and Rosie and Ted and all the kids they had raised, they lived in a cabin that was built by Ray's father. Okay. The only electricity was one light on the ceiling. That was all the electricity. Okay. Ted had a little radio he kept upstairs to listen to the Grand Ole Opry, but other than that, this house was frozen in time. There was an outhouse out back. There was a second wood stove, a cook stove in the kitchen that Rosie cooked on. They didn't have a TV. They didn't have anything. They didn't get the newspaper. They had no idea what day it was. I mean, their way of life was timeless. Life was marked by plowing, planting, growing and harvesting, hunting, winter and spring, summer and fall. I mean, it was as old as the mountain. Well, Ted and Ray had welcomed us in, and Rosie come rushing out of the kitchen and hug my mother and greet us. And we'd all just kind of visit for a while and talk. And then my mother and Rosie would disappear to the kitchen and they'd talk women things. We both learned volumes of herbal remedies from Rosie. Her hair was long, it went well past her waist, and was jet black. I mean, well into old age because she was part Cherokee. Her aunt was actually the old witch woman. That's what they called her. Who local folks went to for cures and to have their fortunes told. So she was a wealth of Appalachian herbal information and folklore. And so was Ray. So was Ted. They made their living really gathering herbs. They gather herbs in the woods and sell them to the Wilcox store that was based out of Asheville but had an office there in Boone. And until Ray became a famous storyteller, that was basically their only income. And so Ted would show me the herbs. He taught me to identify ginseng, golden seal, and all that stuff. And Ray would tell me all kinds of cures. Ray was a character, y'all. I mean, you had to take everything he said with a little grain of salt. But Rosie was a true herbalist, and she spent years teaching me herbal medicine, and that's the foundation of why I'm sitting here today. Well, Rosie didn't really approve of drinking as a rule, okay, but it was Christmas. She didn't mind on Christmas, so we'd bring along some eggnog and brandy. And soon Rosie and my mother would come out of the kitchen with glasses full of brandied eggnog, and the celebration would just be full swing. I'd bring either my guitar or I'd play a six-string banjo that was tuned like the guitar that belonged to Ted. Arvel was usually there, and he'd join me on guitar, banjo, and Ray would play his harmonica. We would play all of our favorite tunes, all the songs by the Carter family and Jimmy Rogers, Bob Wills, Roy Acuff, Hank Williams, and Bill Monroe. You have to say Monroe if you're from the mountains. Ray's favorite song was an old mournful Roy Acuff song called Precious Jewel, and the folk song kind of a blues song called John Henry. Now, I guess everybody's heard John Henry. I knew about four or five versions of John Henry, so I just play them through as Ray sang and played the harmonica because the man had no rhythm whatsoever. He would sing in his own tuneless, rhythmless style. And let me tell you, if you could accompany Ray, playing with Willie Nelson would just be a piece of cake. Rosie would sing the old mountain folk ballads and the old shape note style. All those old beautiful songs about murders and dying lovers and all that. Uh, we'd sing a few hymns too, and that was always risky. Ray had a unique understanding of the Bible, unique understanding of Christian doctrine and theology, to put it mildly. As Arvel put it, he said a preacher came up here once and he and Ray got into it over the Bible. Ray ran that preacher off, and you never seen a preacher cuss so much. Hours would pass, and time would just stand still. We exchanged gifts, which always included Ray's favorite old-fashioned candy and a pouch of tobacco. Ray rolled his own cigarettes, and they were the worst looking cigarettes you've ever seen. He'd roll one up and start telling a story like Wicked John and the Devil was one of his favorites. And he's talking, burning bits of tobacco would just fall all over the place. I mean, they were the sloppiest looking things. Arvo would usually tell a story, punctuating it with his deep chuckle. And then my turn would come around, and I'd do my best. I was kind of awkward with it. It was something I was learning, but Ray'd always cheer me on afterwards, encouraging me to take up the tradition. He'd say, "God, that was pretty good. You could almost pass as a Hicks, tall as you are. There are two kinds of Hicks. There's the crane neck Hicks and the bull neck Hicks. Arvel, he's a bull neck. God." Well, I stand about 6'4", and even in his late 70s, if not 80, Ray was a good 3 or 4 inches taller than me. So when we talked about crane necks and bull necks, he meant it. I was a very tall man. Ray and Rosie would invite us to stay the night, and we'd all get a little choked up when it was time for us to leave. Ted would walk us up the car, and it was always so cold up on Beach Mountain on Christmas Eve. The wind would blow the snow around, but the sky was, I don't even remember a time when there was a cloud in the sky on Christmas Eve. It was just clear as could be, and the moon would reflect on the snow, and it was so bright. I mean, it was never dark. You didn't need a flashlight or anything. You could see the city lights in Tennessee in the distance. And that's how clear the sky was. The silence and cold. It was just such a contrast to the warmth and the celebration inside the house. I've never experienced anything else like it, and I doubt I ever will. Ray passed away a few years ago. Been quite a while now, actually. We went to the funeral in Boone, and Ted and his older brother Leonard met us at the funeral home. "I knew Ewins would come," Ted said. "Ewins were always just like family," Leonard told us. My mother went to talk with Rosie, and I sat with Ted and Leonard reminiscing. I always had a knack for mimicry. I often end up imitating people's voices without even being aware of it. I can sit there talking with someone and somehow just adopt their accent, which y'all may find surprising, given as thick as my southern accent is. But Anyway, Ted said, Daddy would appreciate you was coming. And so without even thinking, I replied, I know exactly what he'd say. He'd say, go, it's Becky and her boy, go. Ted and Leonard, they both laughed and remarked how I sounded just like. Well, we all got a little choked up about then and stepped outside. I remember Ted said, I never did like crowds of people. I guess I'm just too used to being up on the mountain. Someone's rooster had gotten loose, and it was strutting around the parking lot of the funeral home. Just a little Bantam rooster, and that's a pretty odd sight in the center of bustling Boone. Boone's become a very modern town in the past decade or two, but at Ray Hicks' funeral, it didn't seem out of place at all. The New York Times and National Public Radio ran obituaries on Ray. Somehow, though, that colorful, strutting, crowing rooster seemed a more appropriate tribute. We just kind of talked about the roosters and our throats loosened up. So this Christmas Eve, I'll remember those nights at Ray's. I reckon I always will. If y'all have children or grandchildren, here's a gift idea for Christmas. Buy them a recording of Ray or Arvel Hicks telling stories. Or buy a copy of the Jack Tales collected by Richard Chase and learn to tell the stories. Storytelling is such a wonderful tradition. And while I can guarantee there'll never be another Ray, or Arvel, or Rosie or Ted, the Jack Tale tradition can live on through generations to come. So y'all, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I hope you get to spend it with people you love. The one thing Christmas is not about is stuff. Christmas is about family and memories and a baby born over 2,000 years who makes us all family. Merry Christmas, y'all.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.